Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is the last budget before the UK hosts the COP Climate Summit in November, before it presides over the G7 and takes part in the Global Biodiversity Summit. So in that context, the Chancellor should have embraced the enormous potential for a fair and green recovery, to create hundreds of thousands of jobs and to shift our economy onto new sustainable foundations. Climate leadership means deeds, not words. It means following the science on the speed and scale of the investment required to meet climate goals and halt the loss of biodiversity. You know, the question isn't whether we can find a climate initiative here or a mention of green spaces there. I welcome the progress on green bonds and the investment bank. But the question is whether, as a whole, this budget addresses the climate and ecological emergency with anything approaching the ambition or urgency required. And it gives me no pleasure to say that it does not. It is alarming and disappointing to see the Chancellor doubling down on economic dogma that is fueling the fires of the climate crisis and making our society more unequal and less resilient. Because the Chancellor's failed to make space for nature in his red box, it means we're missing out on thousands of jobs that a National Nature Service could create, for example. And more fundamentally, as the Treasury's own Dasgupta review of the economics of biodiversity explains, biodiversity loss is, and I quote, undermining nature's productivity, resilience, and adaptability, fueling extreme risk and uncertainty for our economies and well-being. I say in all seriousness, our nation's health and prosperity would be better served by a Chancellor who cared rather more about hedges and hedgehogs and less about hedge funds. I'd like to highlight three big omissions from this budget. First, we needed a climate and nature test so that all spending and fiscal measures are aligned with limiting global heating to 1.5 degrees and the UK's other environmental goals. The idea that the Treasury already accounts adequately for nature is farcical. If that were the case, the Chancellor would, at the very least, be restoring funding for the Green Homes Grant. It is shameful that this scheme is being allowed to wind down. We need it. Second, on green jobs, we need transformational investment to create those jobs. With unemployment rising and so much to be done to create the fair and green economy, we could have been investing millions. 48 billion, for example, over 18 months could have created over 1 million good green jobs. In the US, Joe Biden has a $2 trillion plan to address the climate emergency. Maybe there's been some kind of spreadsheet error here in the UK. And finally, in this budget and beyond, the Chancellor must act on the conclusions of the Dasgupta review. It must respect the fact that we should have been having a well-being budget. We should be shifting towards an economic approach fit for the 21st century, not fixated on GDP growth, but properly putting well-being and the health of people on the planet at the heart of this budget.